How are you? Good. Good. My name is Tim Harrison, and if you want to remember that, just think Tiny Tim. For some reason, that seems to stick. So I've been asked this maybe 15 times since I've been here, so I'm going to say this one time so that nobody asks me again. I'm 6'8". I think that's about 203 centimeters. I have to look that up as well. Cool. So as you can imagine, well, we're in for a treat today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. Then we're going to talk a little bit about AI. Big surprise. But more specifically, why should we care and why should we care now? Then I'm going to go through a framework, which is a practical process for leading through change. And at the end, it'll be about 10 minutes for you to ask questions for me to answer questions. So if while I'm presenting, you have something that comes to mind, just write it down. And at the end, I want to have plenty of time to have a discussion. Sound good? Cool. All right. So I mentioned my height, and as you can imagine, basketball was a big part of my journey growing up in the United States. By the time I was 14 years old, I received my first scholarship offer and ended up going to play Division I basketball at Rice University, which is in Houston, Texas, which is where I am based out of now. About 2 years into my basketball journey, I realized that professional basketball was not going to be part of my plans. I had a season-ending injury, I tore my meniscus, and I was dealing with a lot of just personal adversity in my own life, adjusting to a rigorous academic schedule plus a demanding athletic schedule. And in my personal life, the woman I was dating at the time actually went behind my back, one of my teammates. And so I was going through this personal crisis where my life was not going the way that I had hoped. And I needed to reinvent myself. I knew that this wasn't working. Unfortunately, I found coaching. The university that I was at had an executive coaching program. So when I was 20 years old, I got to work with a leadership coach. And that was a real catalyst, it was a real game changer for me. I went from a struggling athlete to being a leader on campus. Fast forward, I ended up landing my dream job in strategy consulting at a company called Accenture. I graduated in 2020. Who can remember what happened in 2020? Right? Global pandemic and the social justice crisis after the killing of George Floyd. So I had this job lined up, but I had this deep conviction that there was more that I wanted to contribute in the world. I was getting clear on what my values were, and I wanted to live that out to the fullest. And I saw that a lot of the economic disparities that we saw had the roots in education. But if you're born in the wrong zip code, you don't have access to the same resources to fully realize your God-given potential. So I ended up taking a leap of faith, turned that down, and started an organization that I thought could help address that by making personal development and this coaching that I've experienced accessible. So I'm the founder and CEO of an education-based nonprofit called EPOG Academy. EPOG, that's E-P-O-G, stands for the enjoyable pain of growth. Yeah. So at the same time, I was starting this nonprofit, and I knew I needed to get certified as a coach as well. I knew that there's a rigor behind coaching. So I got into an ICF program. Unfortunately, I went to a program that wasn't other college students, it was executive leaders. There's this hospital in Houston that send their top level managers to get trained as coaches so that they can be better managers. And so we all coached each other, and by the end of it, I was good at it, and I got some of them as clients. And so I also have been doing executive coaching for the last 5 years. I think I'm the youngest, one of the youngest coaches to get my ACC. So for the past 4 years, I've had my foot in education and coaching, but also I've had an executive practice, which has now become a company called Onus Leadership. So that's a bit about my story, but this is about you all, and this is about the opportunity that we have. We are at a unique time. The world is changing. Coaching is changing. And therefore, we as coaches must also change along with it. But why? Why do we actually care about this revolution and these changes in technology? Well, one, there's tremendous opportunity. We have an opportunity to increase our impact as coaches. We can reach more people. If we're leaders in organizations, we can reimagine how we do things. We can increase our profitability. We can also expand in ways that weren't previously possible. That's on the opportunity side. On the challenge side is that this is a unique window in time where if you start using AI now, you have a unique advantage. You get ahead. But in 18 months, 24 months, you have to use AI just to keep up. Imagine going back in time before email. You had to go mail things. Could you actually work the same way? It's like, no, it just wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't be able to keep up. That's what it's going to be like as these tools continue to evolve. And then the last thing is we have a responsibility. Just because these models are getting smarter and people are creating this AI does not mean that it's going to be implemented a certain way. It's on us as leaders, it's on us as coaches to determine how are we going to take advantage of this. We still have a say in shaping this. So this is why we should care that all this stuff is going on. Beyond just the hype, we have a role to play. Cool. But there's a challenge, right? What does it mean to actually get in the game of AI? For a lot of people, you're already in it because you're at the summit, you're deep in it, and other people, you're curious about it. That's why you showed up. And the truth be told, there's a lot of confusion around this area. There's a lot of information overload. There are millions of tools. Each of those tools changes all the time, and it's not always clear what's true and what's hype. Right? You can watch these demos, but then you use the tool. Does it actually do what they are saying it's going to do? Next is not knowing where to start. Right? Okay, great. Maybe we can use AI, but there's all these different ways that we can apply it. Are we talking at the organizational level? This is my personal life. Can I use this in a session? What about data privacy? What about all these different things? And then lastly, there's a need for a clear framework. Right? This is different than in the past. This stuff moves so quickly. So it's not just about mastering a tool or mastering a certain process. It's really about thinking differently. What is the mindset for ongoing innovation? The stuff is going to continue to evolve and continue to change. So how do we as leaders navigate this as it's moving so quickly and evolving? We must also be adapting. So I've come up with a bit of a framework of how to think about ongoing innovation. And that framework is do good deeds. Deeds, that's D-E-E-D-S. Stands for discovery, experiment, evaluate, decide, and scale. It's a 5-part process. So I'm going to break this down, and then I'm going to show you 3 different case studies for how a coach can apply this. Whether you run a coaching company, whether you work in a business, or whether you are your business and you're a solopreneur, this is a framework that can scale up. I'll show you very specific ways that you can apply this. So this process is meant to be ongoing and cyclical. Cyclical. So early. Cool. So discovery is about spotting the opportunity, right? So you came across a new tool, you discovered a new process, you discovered a new framework. By the way, AI isn't innovation. Innovation just means doing something better. And sometimes I can use technology, sometimes it's just a different way of thinking about something. So this is really about innovation. It has less to do with AI, but obviously this is an AI conference, and these tools are very capable. Next is experiment. What is your hypothesis? And what is it that's actually worth changing? I think Jonathan Wright said that yesterday. Why do we use AI in the first place? Not AI for the sake of AI. But what is our hypothesis? Is this going to increase my profit margin? Is this going to help us develop our people better? Is this going to help us do something faster? At the end of the day, it's not about applying AI for the sake of AI. It's about advancing strategy and value and impact. That's what it's always going to be about. So the experiment is, what are you actually trying to change with using this? Then evaluate. Did it actually work? Right? So how do you actually determine whether or not this was successful? What's your criteria? Lastly, next is to decide. So after you run your experiment, evaluate it, based on that data, do you adopt? Do you adapt? Do you delay? Or do you deny? Or decline? Or turn the screen off? And, cool. Right, so if you adopt, that's pretty straightforward. Adopt means you're going to use the tool. So after the experiment, okay, we're going to go ahead and move forward. Adapt means, didn't quite work, let's tweak it a little bit. Let's change it a little bit and run it back. Delay is an interesting one, because in the age of AI, these tools move so quickly that it might not work in this version, but if you wait 3 months, 6 months, it might work again. And there's been plenty of times where I've been halfway through a project, I realize something doesn't work, I pick it back up later, and then now it works because there's been an update. It's happened maybe 5 or 6 times. Cool. And then lastly is decline. Hey, this didn't work. And sometimes that's the cost of innovating. You try something, and you're disappointed it doesn't work. But it's about having a mindset and a culture that is constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Sometimes it's not going to work, but then you might get a gain that saves you $10,000 or reinvents how you can run your business. And then lastly is scale. This is about actually how do you take the results that you got and distribute that widely. So this is very process oriented, and there's a lot of text here. But I actually want to show you what this looks like in action, and at the end, I'll have a chance to answer some questions. So do good deeds. There's a quote I love that says, the one who does not read has no advantage over someone who can't. And it's the same thing with AI literacy. These tools are incredibly capable, but if you don't use them, you have no advantage over having this. And so that's just a piece of encouragement. And like I mentioned, this matters whether you're an individual coach, whether you are leading a department at a company, or whether you run your own company. This can scale up. And the 3 case studies that I'll show you are going to hit each aspect of it. Cool. So I mentioned the nonprofit that I run, EPOG Academy, Joyful Pain of Growth. And the first thing we did is we started off with executive coaches, right? So we would take executive coaches and pair them with high school students in low-income communities and help them work on their plan for their life. Challenge was, by the time we got to 40 or 50 students, we ran out of private spaces for them to meet with their coach. It was a logistical nightmare to get a whole bunch of 14 to 18-year-olds on the same call with a Wi-Fi connection, with a coach, with all the craziness that happens in school. Right? Then our biggest partner got their funding cut, and so we got cut as well. So here I am. I took this leap of faith, I'm running this nonprofit, and it looks like this is not working out right now. So we had to figure out what was next. And fortunately enough, around this time, that's when ChatGPT started coming out. That was in November of 2022. I first used it Christmas Eve of 2022. It was about a month later. And so I started using AI for different aspects of the program. And then I came across a study by someone who's actually here at this conference, Nikki Terblanche, where he showed that AI coaching, human coaching, had equal impact on goal attainment over a 10-month period. And so I realized, well, if we can actually use AI to do the coaching, then it actually solves our scaling problem, because we can give every student a coach in their pocket. And then 2, there's a 400 to 1 student to counselor gap in the US in education. And so that will never be filled by humans. So can we actually use AI coaching as a way to bridge this guidance gap in a way that wasn't previously possible? So discovery was AI coaching and human coaching have equal impact on goal attainment. So then what was our experiment? Well, we wanted to test this out. Right? That's a big deal to change the organization and change our entire model. So first we wanted to test, well, do they actually use it? Do they find it useful? And do they find it weird, or do they like it? Right? So what we did was I built a basic coach bot, and this was back in early 2023, before it was main hype cycle and all that stuff. And went to 120 students across public schools, private schools, charter schools. We let them have a session. And then we asked them, how'd you like it? All these different questions, would you share it with a friend? Was it useful? Not only do they like using it, they actually shared with us that they would rather talk to a human coach, rather talk to the AI coach than a human in the classroom, because it won't judge them. And they can talk to it at 9 p.m. when it's inappropriate to talk to an adult from school. Right? And then we rated it, and we looked at transcripts, and we asked them how helpful was it. So that was the experiment. And that was the evaluation, right? So they'd rather talk to the AI coaches than human coaches. And then our decision was I went to my board and said, hey, I want to pivot the organization and focus on delivering this through AI. The first question they asked me is like, well, what is ChatGPT? So before I even said, hey, we're going to make this big organizational change, I have to open my laptop and say, hey, this is like a tool that's coming. And so that's how early it was in the process. So that was the decision. We decided to adopt. And then for scale, well, we needed to continue to test our roadmap. Not only do they like it, or will they talk to it, is it useful, but will they use it over time? Can we acquire the resources to scale, and all those different things? And so this is an example of that framework at an organizational level, from discovery, experiment, evaluate, decide, and then scale. Right? And so what are the benefits, right? What are some of the results? Well, in our first program, we were able to reach 150 students across 6 different campuses, which is something that we hadn't done before. And that's relatively small compared to the possible scale. The other thing is, we were able to secure more funding because we now have a scalable solution. We're not just doing programs one school at a time. So we were able to attract more resources as an organization. Also, we can reach students in a new way and it provides this value and all that good stuff, right? So this was some of the results of the first experience. So that's PowerPath, that's the name of the product. The next case study is called Project Beacon. In my other organization called Onus Leadership, we got an incredible opportunity to be part of a research initiative with the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health. In partnership with a university called Rutgers, which is in the East Coast of the United States, we received a $3 million grant in order to measure the impact of coaching on biomedical PhD students. We wanted to look at their self-efficacy, look at their well-being, and look at how does coaching actually help their overall productivity. And so my organization was contributing to some of the coaching research, but also hiring a team of coaches and setting it up and making sure that the coaching intervention actually happens. And so that was a great opportunity, but then I looked and I ran the numbers and saw that our profit margin was going to be around 30%. And so I'm using these tools and I'm wondering, well, hey, can we use AI to decrease our expenses so that we can keep more and recycle it back into the business? So that is the discovery. Right? Can we actually use AI for this real project? Now keep in mind, this project isn't actually using AI, but we're thinking strategically, well, can AI actually help one of our existing business outcomes? Because you can't always build a business over how the future is going to look. You have to build a business over what's not going to change over time. What's not going to change is you're going to want to have more impact in the world. You're going to want your business to be more successful. You're going to want to be known for what you do. And so that's one way to ground yourself when things are moving very quickly. What's not going to change over the next 5 years? And that's a way to be able to predict what's going to happen. So that was the discovery. Hey, can AI actually reduce our expenses? And then the experiment. So there's two main expenses that we had as a business. One was going to be administration, managing all these coaches and all these different sessions. And so that's going to take up our time, it's going to take resources. The second thing is the evaluation of the coaching notes. So every time one of our coaches had a conversation, they fill out a survey and then they would send it to us. And that survey might be 2 pages of information. There's 400 sessions that are going to happen, right? It might take 20 minutes per session, and so that's almost a month or a month and a half worth of work. So these are 2 things that I thought, okay, well maybe we can be more efficient here using AI. Thanks. Cool. It'll come on in a second. Cool. Maybe we can be more efficient using AI. And so what I did was I took so what's the experiment? The experiment was, okay, can we reduce our administration work? And so what I did was I actually was able to train a custom chatbot on all of our information. We had our coach handbook, how do they talk to students, how do they set up a call, how do they send an invoice, and then we got a whole bunch of information from the university. Are there therapists on campus? What are their numbers in case the coaching goes beyond that? Is there a rec center? All those different things. And then we equip them with information about PhD students. What is the journey of a PhD? What are their biggest challenges? And yada, yada, yada. And we train that all into a chatbot, and then we gave our coaches access to the bot. So whenever they had a question, instead of reaching out to our team and sending an email, they can go to the AI first. And so over the course, we had over 500 requests. And so you can imagine that each request would have been maybe a 10, 15-minute email exchange. You multiply that by 500, and that's a whole bunch of work. That's dozens of hours that no longer have to be taken up by a person, right? Not only that, but coaches get a more immediate source of support. Let's say they have a session and it goes beyond the realm of coaching. You can actually just ask the AI bot and say, hey, are there therapists or are there other mental health resources on campus? Boom, give them that information. And then we can verify all that on our end. The other thing was the actual administration of running through the research, right? And so we produced over 400 sessions and so session notes that we were able to go through completely anonymized. And what we were able to do is we were able to use an older version of AI, which is just a basic integration, where anytime they would submit a survey, it would populate a spreadsheet on Google Sheets. And then Google Sheets released a new feature where you can actually plug AI into the cells. And instead of a function, you can just put a prompt. And so we had a combination of structured data, like numbers, what time the session happened, But we also had unstructured data, like, okay, write a 2 paragraphs about what happened in this session. Did they commit to an action? Okay, if so, what was that action? And so there's a lot of variability. So we would have to go through all 400 sessions. Except we were able to just create a simple prompt. We were able to categorize it. So we created criteria, right? So there's maybe 5 to 9 actual types of conversations you could have. It's about academics, it's about my personal life, it's about my well-being. And we just created a prompt that looked at that and then categorized it. Which of these topics, or multiple topics, is this session? And so we were able to plug that in, and we got to the point where every time a coach would actually submit their post-session notes, it would automatically populate the spreadsheet, and then the AI would read that and categorize it, and it would fill up a table in analytics. And so what we ended up with is a real-time analysis of our program that saved about a month worth of work. So every time the session would upload, it would just move the bar chart or the pie chart, and it would completely synthesize it all autonomously. Right? We set that up in 3 days. The only reason it took 3 days is because I delegated it to our operations manager. I could have done it originally, but I wanted him to learn how to do that so he can also upskill. Right? Cool. So as a result, we were able to increase or decrease our expenses by 10%, which means we increased our profits by 10%, all off of maybe 4 or 5 days of work. And as a result, the students got a better service because the coaches were more equipped, and we could reallocate that time to other projects. Right? Cool. So that's case study number 2, if you're in a department. And then case study number 3, this is for more of the individual coaches. So I know a lot of you follow the news and politics and whatnot. A lot has been going on in the U.S. in the last couple of years. And our program was funded by the NIH, which unfortunately, due to the change in administration, had a lot of pushback against DEI type initiatives. Part of our study was looking at, it was for all students, but part of the study was looking at the impacts for underrepresented groups as well. Because we had that language, we were targeted by the whole DOGE aspect. And so the funding was discontinued after we finished up this year. And so that sucked because the students, they were getting some help. A lot of the students also had NIH grants, so we saw that in the coaching sessions that they were also worried about funding. But also, me personally, yeah, that's a big hit. That was a big contract for us. And so we had to figure out how are we going to adjust and to adapt. That's part of leadership. It's part of what we do. And so fortunately, because we were able to save a little bit more money using AI, that we actually able to reinvest that money into a new microphone. Check. Hello? Check. Cool. The adaptability. All right. So we had to reinvest that. And I had a little bit of urgency. That was a big contract for us. It's supposed to be multiple years out. So you make plans on those kinds of things. And so, discovery. Okay, so around that time, I was speaking about AI, I was posting about my organization, and the ICF caught wind. So I got invited to be on the ICF's Global Task Force for AI and coaching. I was blessed to be one of 8 individuals globally, and that allowed me to be in different conversations and to speak to a lot of coaches around the world about AI and how to use it, how to take advantage of this. And so during that time, I realized, hey, there is an opportunity. And so I've done a lot of workshops, and a coach that I knew hit me up on LinkedIn, and they said, hey, do you have a recording of something that you have presented before? I'd love to see it. I said, sure. Sent them a link. Forgot about it. 3 months later, they come back and send me another message, and they said, hey, I finally got around to watching the video. This is great. I've been using AI. I want to send this to some friends, but I thought to ask you first, are you charging for this? And I said, I am now. So, discovery. Hey, maybe there's an opportunity for a new service, right? To provide recording or to do a course. So, experiment. Well, how do I actually validate this? How do I actually test that? Well, what I did was I put out a survey. I called it State of AI in Coaching. I sent it out to a lot of people. We had about 100 coaches around the world respond, and it was, how do you use AI? What are your goals in your business? What are your biggest challenges? What do you do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis? What do you want to do less of? What do you want to do more of? All of that information. We used AI to analyze all that, and it literally told us, here's the course and here's the program to build. Right? We looked at me. And then I took about 15 people who had completed the survey, and I took them through a 30-day process of how you actually use AI in a coaching business to save time and save money. So that's the actual experiment. And then evaluation. We actually looked at it. And so in exchange for giving them this free program, we said, hey, well, we want to also measure the results. So I'm going to interview you, tell me how did you use it, how often, did you save any money, did you save any time? And what we found in the evaluation is that one coach named Derek, he was able to save $36,000. He was going to hire a video editor for $3,000 a month, showed him a few tools, didn't have to do that. Other people were saving about 150 hours because they were automating different aspects of their onboarding. And so we have about 15 or 13 case studies about how coaches have actually gained major results using AI. So this is real stuff. It's not just hype. You really want to see, well, how are you using it? What benefit is it having on your business? And so that was great. The other thing I did was at the end, I did a exit interview. So I talked to them all for about 60 minutes, about 13 to 15 calls, and we transcribed it. I had my AI note taker join the call. And then because we had all that in text, we just threw that in a large language model, and we were able to create a SWOT analysis. What were all the strengths of the program, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats? Not only that, in the program, they were saying, hey, this was helpful. We just told the AI to, hey, extract testimonials and quotes from these people, because it's all in the transcript. Boom. 40 testimonials right there, just from those conversations. And then we threw the video of the Zoom into another AI called Visitor. And what it did was you tell it, okay, find clips that I can use for marketing. And it would find the coach saying something positive, and it would clip that up, and it would just load it up for us. So all that was within maybe a 35-day stretch from having that first message on LinkedIn, right? And so as a result, we were able to, so scale. So the decision was, yes, we're going to do this. We're seeing great results. And to scale, I ended up developing an 8-week program for coaches to actually go through the process of integrating AI to get some of the results that those other coaches have gotten. And so as a result, I was able to add a whole new revenue stream for my business that was residual. So I didn't actually have to show up and do that. I was able to, when we can market it, or if I can speak and people sign up, that actually added a new aspect to my business that wasn't there before. The other thing is building a global coaching community. Because it's all online, it doesn't matter what time you show up. So I've been able to connect with people all around the world, and so on and so on. So I know this is heavy content, but those are the 3 different case studies. Whether you are leading an organization, whether you are leading a department, or whether you are your department, you are a solopreneur coach, this process of ongoing innovation. What is the discovery? What is the experiment? How do I evaluate this? What is my decision? And how do I scale this? Right? That is the process, and that is the mindset. And also, as I was writing this out, I realized that every time there was something good that happened, it actually came from something that kind of sucked. It was adversity. It was our program got cut. Right? So I had to figure out, well, what are new ways that I can actually go about doing this? Even in my personal journey, right? Our program got cut with Epoch Academy. We couldn't scale this thing, and the school got the funding cut. And so we had to figure out a new model, and that led to the innovation. And so in the time of rapid change, things are not all going to be positive. I'm excited about AI, but a lot of this innovation was born out of struggle, out of limitation, out of challenge. And so that is just an encouragement to you all that you never know what an event is going to be until it's said and done. We still have a choice in how we respond to this. There's a lot of fear about what AI might do. There's a lot of excitement around what AI might do. But it's good to be AI sober. Don't be AI drunk, but don't be, too far on the other side, because this stuff is powerful. This stuff is powerful. But it's really on us how we choose to integrate it that determines the benefit that it has on us and the benefit that it has on others. So once again, the person who does not read has no advantage over the person who can. AI literacy is the same. Let's do good deeds. Thank you.